You know, guys, it's interesting, and I've talked about this. Yeah, I got to put my sunglasses on, guys. In other videos, but it can't be talked about enough. You know, pretty much anybody alive today that in 2025 that might listen to this video has been raised with 2, maybe 3 narratives. This would be anybody that's in the West. Okay, West being Europe, the U.S., the Western. So the first narrative is you've got to hate Russia, or at a minimum be very skeptical of Russia. And I guess maybe tied to that narrative, or a similar narrative, is you've got to hate or be very skeptical of any Arab or Islamic countries. And then the third is you have to love Israel, the modern day geopolitical nation of Israel, unconditionally, without question. You have to be willing to do anything for modern day Israel because they're chosen people, supposedly, right? If you're a Christian in the West, you believe that you're judged based on whether or not you love modern day Israel. So those narratives are pounded 80 years plus. Those narratives are pounded into our Western civilizations, Western societies. Well, tied to my last video, guys, those are all part of the false narrative to set up a never-ending system of control, money-focused control, power, greed. And we're, again, tied to that is the idea of patriotism, right? Well, if you don't hate Russia, and you don't hate Arab countries, and you don't love Israel with everything, you're not a patriot. You're not a true American. And the amount of pressure, guilt, whatever you want to call it, that's leveraged on these narratives is incredible, to the point now where, if you stand up and you speak the biblical truth about the modern day nation of Israel and the people who live there that call themselves Jews, you could go to jail. In some jurisdictions, you could go to jail. And it's getting more broad and broad that's going to be everywhere. Certainly, if you came out with the truths about Russia and what they are and what they aren't, you'd be considered a traitor, non-patriot. If you speak the truth about the modern day nation of Israel, you're instantly anti-Semite. And what are the worst labels you can have in our society? Racist, anti-Semite, and traitor, non-patriot. Those are literally the worst labels you can have. So we're so afraid to say the truth when we know the truth, because you will be, persecuted within society. You will quickly be out on an island. Now, I could care less, because I know where I am. I know where my spirit is and what's inside me. So I'll speak that truth. But most people won't. Most people are too afraid because they don't want to challenge the 99% status quo messaging of their entire lifetime, their entire family's lifetime, 3 generations, 4 generations or more. Again, it's a masterful deception. by these world political leaders, perpetuated through decade after decade, and the power base of it, that's something that is almost incomprehensible. You know, I was texting with a buddy the other day, and right after the Trump administration had cracked down on that judge, I think it was in Wisconsin, I'm not sure, that was harboring illegals, the next day on all the mainstream news, and I mean all, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of it, the talking heads were saying the exact same phrases, verbatim. This is an escalation of Trump's immigration policies. Flip to a new channel, another talking head would say exactly the same thing. So my buddy and I were texting about that, and we said, who is it that sends that fax to every news outlet in the world, mainstream, and says, say this is your narrative? Who sends that? I don't know who the person is. We know the cabal, but that's what we're up against. And let me be clear on something too, guys. I mean, am I trying to turn this into a political? Well, I'm trying to connect the politics to the spirituals, to the scriptures, guys. But let me be clear on something too. While I have the values that supposedly align with conservative life, I choose life, you know, responsible choices, things like that, I want to be clear that Trump is a full-on Zionist, right? He's owned by modern-day geopolitical Israel. Okay. So we're not going to solve any of the big problems with Trump. Could some of his policies make a difference in the day-to-day lives, short term, of some people? Yes, I'm all for that. But that's such a small, that's a distraction almost, guys, as to what's really going on. Okay. So another good thought process. Look forward to your comments. We'll keep tackling this moving forward.